to be.
Part of your FBI file.
Most likely, anyhow.
Now it's actually up. So I'll call to order this work session.
And I missed last week. I bet it is.
And ask Layla to come on up with Kelly, I assume.
Stop the laughter. Stop the fun. Try to behave.
Yeah, all right.
Good evening, Mayor, Councilors, Layla Amon, Development Manager. And this is one of my easiest work session items ever, because I just basically introduced Kelly Keener of the Downtown Milwaukie Business Association. But I'll just preface that by saying we continue to work together quite a lot, and later in regular session, we'll be adopting a parking strategy of which the DMBA, particularly help that Kelly gave us, got some real robust input from stakeholders. So really grateful for that partnership, and looking forward to, and I'm hoping you're going to give us an update on the many things that are coming up this winter that we'll be working together on.
Final quarter of the year, so to speak.
So with that, our quarterly update from Kelly.
Good afternoon. Officially still afternoon, I guess. So we'll touch on exactly that last quarter of the year. I'll kind of go through a list of things. We had an incredible meeting 2 weeks ago with our association, of which we also sadly sent our favorite officer, sorry gang, Officer Cloy's off into retirement. So we had a little celebration that day for him. We're going to miss him. We're going to miss him a lot. He's just a gem of a human being, let alone a grand officer. So. But we'll talk a little bit about that. But first things first, the association wanted me to share our appreciation of the fact that everyone's worked so hard to get John into a full-time position with the city. I think there was a pretty you might have heard the cheer actually over here that day.
But we haven't done it yet.
Hasn't done it yet. We're working towards it. We know the intent is there, and we're moving forward with it. So the response was literally, I think you could have probably heard the cheer over here that morning. So
I felt a vibration.
Did you? Excellent. We didn't have enough coffee in us to really get it together. So thank you again. I know it's a project, and I know that we're still a few steps away from it, but certainly we're going in the right direction. So we're excited about it. And again, really appreciate him. He's a gem of a human being, and I know that the businesses love and appreciate him with interaction with them and with our customer base as well. So it's been really, really great. Here I start with the really-reallys. It worked the last time, right? So we'll talk about primarily some of the marketing that's going to come up, and I'm just going to brush over it, try not to take too long because I know we are on time. But we've got a lot that we're doing. October 5th is our final first Friday of the season, and I promise not to let out a cheer, but we're ready to start into the next chapter. It's a great event. I know our ender of the season is always a lot of fun, big Harvest Festival type program that we're working on as well. So October 27th will be the Halloween trick or treat. The third annual, which seems crazy. We anticipate grand attendance as well. We figure our best guesses last year were close to 3,000. Gorgeous. I know we doubled from the year previous, thinking we were super smart and had plenty of candy, and we were all out running to get more candy. So
we were too.
Yeah, it's love, total love. My comment again is that it's one of those times in the city where you just hear joy. Like the whole energy in the city is just pure joy. So we're really looking forward to it. Fingers crossed for year 3 of perfect weather, because that would be amazing. So, but I think that we'll still have a great attendance one way or the other. With that being said, is that we're going to follow it up the next day, and I think that you talked a little bit about it this past week. We are going to, the association is going to host a pumpkin decorating contest the following Sunday. We're still working out the details of how it's going to flow and that kind of thing, but it's going to be all the businesses decorating and a little competition between categories of businesses, and we're still working out the details of how that's going to look. So with that being said, City Hall is a business within the city of Milwaukee, and we have grand expectations of what the pumpkins will look like. Details to come. I know that we're working on the scarecrow contest. We have Denise Baker working with us quite a bit, and she has been really great in getting that information across. That's been kind of one of those that the businesses have not participated in. We have great enthusiasm for that this year, so I think we'll see some activity from them. I think some of them have already picked up applications as well. So Thanksgiving Farmers Market, we are working with the businesses as well and encouraging them not only to be open, which is, let me clarify that, November 18th, it's Sunday, rain or shine. It's always been a really strong day for us from a business standpoint. So we're really encouraging a lot of the other businesses to be open, to host markets, to host activities, that kind of thing downtown, and really just sort of build a great community event that particular weekend. As well, we'll follow that on November 24th, and we are going to participate in the Small Business Saturday. American Express does a huge marketing campaign every year. We've not ever participated as a group. This year, we're actually going to participate as a group. So a lot of details are coming. Layla and I are working with some of the grants and things that we have available to us on how we're going to specifically market all of these activities and that kind of thing downtown. Following that, obviously the Umbrella Parade, and DMBA will participate in the Umbrella Parade this year. That'll be kind of a first for us. We've not done that in the past. And as well, we are encouraging the businesses again, to host vendors, activities, that kind of thing, sort of create a big Christmas market festival throughout the entire downtown. It's great. We've done a little of that over in our block, and we find that on the walk back, it's kind of a fun time for people to shop and mingle and eat and shop. So we like the shop. So we'll be, again, getting a lot of those details out. We talked a little bit about the single-use bag resolution. Great support of that with our business community. And that, I think, is kind of enough right at the moment. That'll keep us busy through the end of the year, along with running our businesses, too. So.
Cool.
So appreciation for Miss Layla. I just want to go on record as saying that she's been downtown a lot, and we love seeing her downtown and need her downtown. So we appreciate that very much, having her part of our business community and part of our meetings in our group. So with that being said, any questions for me? I tried to keep it short.
Has the construction that is now pretty much under full swing, more or less, well, we got one more big thing to launch, but...
Yeah, we are seeing some impact, particularly across in that generally, just like right now I drove past the site, and the parking is all blocked along there, and there's no activity on the site. So it's some of those timing issues that we still need to really work with those folks on. I think we're having more issues with, and I just got an email today, I haven't got a chance to visit with Layla about, from utilities, and because they have these open-ended permits and some of their communication. Twice now we've had the area down by Graham's, and they're taking 8 to 9 parking places essentially, which, pretty
You
much
mean the
wipes out all-
trucks of the utility companies?
trucks and that kind of thing, and they've received no notification, that kind of thing. There's no ability to put a plan together. So like the hair salon that's right there with between Wonderland and the Graham building, that little tucked in there, I guess had a really difficult time because all of their parking was eliminated that twice now. And then they're feeling that obviously spilling over into where the retail is and that kind of thing. So I think it's more utilities than it is the construction folks. And again, just timing. I know that R&H, I've seen some emails going back and forth, and they've been exceptionally responsive, and trying to ensure that they heighten the awareness with their whole team of let's get those signs down. So I'll send a note tonight and just remind them of that it was the case tonight. So
Cool.
Somebody just missed it accidentally, I'm sure. So yeah, it's a little impact.
So you said at the end, supportive of the bag resolution. I mean, it doesn't apply to any downtown businesses at this point, but you don't foresee opposition when it does?
No, I don't.
Okay.
To be honest, I mean, the feedback that we've gotten has been positive for the most part, and really, even like the custom bags and some of the things that the folks are using, those are all, most everybody's using a recyclable type product anyway. So, yeah, no, there hasn't been a lot of pushback. I know that even Carmen had already been starting on some change. I mean, it doesn't impact, it doesn't affect her technically, but she's already been working on that, some of the other restaurants and stuff too. It's just, it's working with them and coming up with options and solutions to make it easier for them, keeping the costs in line. I mean, packaging is, strangely enough, in that industry, packaging oftentimes can be the most expensive part of doing business in a restaurant. So.
Well, I would just add, and since Kelly mentioned that the DMBA is going to do the pumpkin decorating among the businesses, the market is going to do, once again, for the second year, the Guess the Weight of the Giant Pumpkin, which was a big hit last year, and raised a few $100s for the Meals on Wheels program. So
Should be a great day, another one. Sad to see the market close. But
Good.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to the Halloween thing. Yeah, that was
It's a
such
fun
fun last
day.
year.
Yeah.
Lisa got her head cracked.
I use that
No, she had
picture
a-
all the
she had a-
time. That's one of
She had a
my
knife through her
favorite
head.
pictures.
The kids were fascinated.
super. Right.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Kelly.
So, next up we have the first year review of the Milwaukie Station Food Cart Pod with Valeria. And Alma.
Thank you. I'm really here for moral support. Thank you. So Alma Flores, Community Development Director. Joining me is Valeria Vidal, our new Housing and Economic Development Coordinator. I wanted to make sure that she comes before you with a project so that you get to know her and the work that she's going to be providing the city. So far, I've had the wonderful pleasure of working with her. She's doing fantastic. And she will be giving you the first year in review for the food cart pod. And I'm up here not only for support, but also she hasn't been here that long, so she won't have a lot of the history if you have any questions related to that.
Yeah, so good evening, Mayor and councilors. I'm really happy to be back after 2 months of being here for the first time. And I'm also very excited to present the first year review of the Milwaukie Food Cart Pod that we've been working on. So the Milwaukie Station Food Cart Pod was created from a vision of offering a unique and flexible opportunity for micro-entrepreneurs looking to test and incubate their business ideas or just provide for themselves and their families. Additionally, this pod would also provide an answer to the demand of food options here in the city and create a vibrant space strategically located next to the new Max Orange line. So we can confidently say that it's been a successful year. Keeping the vision in mind, we have created a place for people to visit and create a buzz around the downtown in terms of incubating minority-owned businesses and for greater community development as a tourist attraction. The timeline provided in the staff report serves to help showcase the work and effort put in by various stakeholders to make the Milwaukie Food Cart Pod Station a reality, and I can highlight a couple of them. In October 2015, the city put forward an RFQ process for site management. Richard Johnson Group was hired to provide that. In May 23rd of 2016, the city got a $10,000 Metro grant for the implementation. On August 4th of 2017, we had the opening of the food cart pod, and just a couple weeks ago, we had our first year anniversary party, August 31st of 2018. So currently the food carts are in full form. Originally we planned for 15 food carts, but we have had a consistent flow of 10 to 11 given the space constraints. Sometimes these layouts don't speak to the reality of the space when we plan, and we have the original plan up on the screen. We had a few larger size carts than expected. That also changed things around. The site also offers an ATM, picnic tables with umbrellas for up to 60 people, restrooms, and hand washing stations as part of the amenities that take up the available space on the site. Since the opening of the food cart, 3 food carts have physically moved out and 3 carts have changed owners, but have remained in place. Although the Milwaukie Station food cart is full, the city continues to receive interest from business owners to join the pod. This waiting list is managed by Richard Johnson, but we get CC'd on these. A temporary A-frame sign was placed on the Coho Point at Kellogg Creek's site on McLaughlin to help people kind of have a little bit more of marketing and have people kind of find their way towards it. And the city also provides exposure of the food cart pod on various social media accounts, Instagram, Facebook. The marketing efforts of the sites are also complemented by myself providing free business resources. I have gone to the carts on my own, given them information and just checked in with them. And we also provide relevant updates to these businesses, such as the plastic bag ban, which was received very positively, and any other problem solvings around safety, physical infrastructure, to name a few. So where we are right now and our future actions, as requested, we have continuing the conversation about the actions taken by the city from the feedback we receive. We're happy to report that the tables have been painted, and they look great. If you haven't been there, you definitely should. We heard loud and clear that this was a concern from customers. We're currently working on potentially installing new tents and heat lamps that are compliant with our building code. Concerns from business owners around safety have been addressed with an increase of patrol vehicles during late evenings, and also addressing bathroom use after hours. Food cart owners have reported that they've seen a big change on their safety perception since these actions have been implemented over the past month.
Can I ask a question about additional infrastructure?
Definitely.
There are not potable water filling station, correct? Is there any thoughts on that in the future? If not,
That's a great question. I'll write it down.
They have spigots, so we have.
I mean, for customers to fill up a water bottle instead of buying. Okay.
No, that would, yeah. When we trenched just to provide water to the food
Carts
themselves. Yeah.
But if we have fewer carts than originally planned for, is there a unused spigot that somehow could be converted or something?
They're all utilized right now, so I'm not sure if whenever there's a change in ownership and there's a delay in that ownership, whether that one becomes available during that short time. But I don't know if we want to promote it as such when we might have a food cart coming in soon. That's definitely a question for our management entity to see if they would be willing to keep one open for the public, especially if you have pets visiting with their owners. They might need some water, or I know it's being used right now to irrigate the plantings that are there as well when it's not being used by the food cart owners, but certainly for the general public.
That water's
considered.
potable, right? I mean, so isn't it a matter, maybe this is too easy, but of drawing a line?
Well, that's, what I was going to ask. So I can't imagine that when we put the main, what's the word for the
Water main?
the meter, that we did it so precisely and so small that it could only supply 15 food carts, and that's all ever. I have to assume we put a commercial size meter there. So it's just a matter of plumbing, really.
Plumbing is all there, it's just a matter of whether or not one gets used for the public versus.
No, but
being-
creating a new, the point is
Oh,
we
a
could
new
create a
line.
new
Water filling
system.
station for-
And I would actually take that one step further. I mean, and this is for a bigger conversation when we get closer to renewing, assuming we're going to renew his lease. I'm interested in exploring the possibility of actually putting in bathrooms instead of outhouses with real sinks and real, all of that, which could easily then include a water filling station.
Well, but that is a bigger conversation, whereas a water fountain might be an easier, shorter term, nearer term kind of a fix.
We can have a discussion with Peter and our internal staff to see what the internal cost would be if we were going to do a splitter on it. I just don't know. We didn't budget anything, but it doesn't mean if it's cheap, we can't do it.
I mean, I think we have one bubbler in town, is that right? Or do we still even have that one? There used to be a bubbler in front of the candy store.
One right in
Yeah,
front of
there's one.
Enchante still, and then we just installed a second one at a park. Was that at
Oh, we are
Milwaukie
going
Bay?
to do one at Wichita, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I think they were doing one next to the bathroom.
I think we're up to
at
three.
Milwaukie Bay.
Yeah, the Milwaukie Bay one's in, the one at Enchante is in, and then I think we're putting one in Wichita.
At Wichita, yeah.
So, that would be another good thing to have in, and it could include a water bottle.
Yeah, that's what we're
capacity.
putting in Wichita.
And those are owned by NCPRD. The one on Main Street was ours, but the other two were actually put in by NCPRD. But we can find out how much they cost.
Yeah, we can get back to you. Thank you with that. So that just leads us to any additional questions that you may have, either from the staff report of the presentation. I know I only had 15 minutes, so.
Also, I had
That's my only question.
I had a couple questions. I was surprised to hear that you're considering it full, because I definitely felt like that. Yeah, I knew we'd talked 13 or more, and that southernmost space to me seems to invite a food cart. Seems to feel empty to me, like it needs a food cart in there. So I was kind of surprised that they're considering it full and you're turning people away.
Well, we currently have 10 to 11 food carts plus
Yeah.
the beer and wine cart. And as you see, some of the sizes of the food carts are different. So I don't know if there's a specific regulation on how much space there has to be also in between them. But
Have a little more history on it. The reason why that southern end where the ATM and that additional seating is was part of the Metro Transformation Grant requirements. They wanted us to have pockets of seating so that it wasn't just all one large communal space in the middle.
Oh.
And that was to help break up maybe a lot of clique or high school related functions. They wanted a separate space available for people who wanted a little more quiet or separation away. So that actually ended up eliminating one additional. We can, once the, that was just a condition of the grant at the time that we received it. Those are changes that we could make down the line, however we see fit.
Well, I don't think 10 to 11 is a bad number, except, and this gets to my second question, they're hardly ever open. I had family visiting. I went on Friday night at 7 o'clock, 3 carts were open. And Friday, the weather was kind of crappy. It wasn't raining at the time, but 3 carts were open. I went back Sunday at 6. It was very nice weather. 1 cart was open. if they want to close on Sundays, if they want to, I realize, they're all small businesses, they need to have a day or two off, but it seems like they should stagger that. There should be some core hours, there should be some reliability that you can go there at dinner time and there will be at least half the carts open,
At least predictable, because I think, if you're turned away once, you might go back. If you're turned away 2 or 3 times, you give up.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and then the whole thing dies.
Yeah.
And we have addressed that with Johnson Group in terms of the management aspect of that, because part of the contract with them is to manage those hours to make sure there is a level of certainty from the customer service side of things. And that is a repeated conversation he has with those entrepreneurs. And I think it's just a matter of sort of adjusting and adapting to those times. They're supposed to have their hours up. Some of them are complying with that, and he's having to enforce on the other ones that are not. So it'll hopefully right-size itself soon.
Yeah, I noticed the Filipino one has very clear posted hours and that they're closed on Sunday, but most of them I don't think really have hours. So, yeah.
I think that's about the only complaint that I've ever heard from people in the community, is that they went down there and either nothing or very little was open. But I haven't, after we rectified the garbage issue in the very beginning, I haven't heard any other negative comments at all about it, just all kinds of good comments. So,
Well, I was going to say, I heard negative comments about the tables, so I really do appreciate you guys taking
But they
care of
fixed
the
them.
tables.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll touch base with Richard. Again, with the hours of operation, just like Alma said, he did ask them to put up the hours, and some did and some didn't.
Wouldn't it be nice if they'd have that on Facebook or on a website so that you could look from home and go, okay, how many are going to be open today? And is the one I want to go to, or whatever, going to be open? So, yeah.
Yeah, we could add it to our city's website too.
Yeah. Yeah, that'd be great.
Each business.
That'd be great.
I had a question regarding attendance. Is it continuing to go up? Did it plateau? Anecdotally, do we know how many people are utilizing carts?
We don't have those specific numbers. From what I heard from Richard is that there's definitely a seasonality to it. I also know that they do better in lunch than they do dinner time, which have some answers of why they were closed. I know that the long weekend, when they had their their anniversary party, obviously it was a long weekend, so not a lot of people showed up, but they said that Sundays are so slow. So I'm guessing that they even might be doing their business operations when they are seeing fit that most people come. Lunch is very busy, but I don't have those specific numbers, and I could ask Richard if he has any of that data that we could share, but he didn't mention any of that.
And there maybe is a chicken and egg issue on this opening versus attendance, because I know that there are nights that we have not gone, myself and my partner, because I'm thinking, they're not open. They haven't been open when I go down there, and so then I don't go. We look elsewhere.
Yeah, there's definitely
If I knew they were open,
self-fulfilling prophecy thing there. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
No, this is great feedback, and I told him I'd check in with him tomorrow morning so I can have some answers for you guys as well.
But it's overall very exciting that they're there. I don't want this to come across as a doom and gloom and bad. It's a great amenity, and I'm so excited that they're down there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the general
definitely.
response that everybody I've ever talked to. They really love it. You touched briefly on the potential for a different covering that would be heatable, like with walls. You said one sentence, and
They asked for a lot of things that they thought could be fit and that they've heard customers ask. They mostly asked for heat lamps, and we're trying to figure out how the building code plays into that. And as far as we know, there has to be some space between the tents and where the heat lamps would go and any other type of infrastructure that they're thinking of, even the material of the tents that they would want to replace the current tent with. We are still working on what is actually feasible and realistic with and still being compliant with our code. But they just gave us kind of, what can we do, and a couple of them mention heat lamps because they had seen it in Portland. or
So
a fire
exactly,
pit
there
unit.
are
Yeah.
dozens and dozens of them in Portland.
Yes, they
So
referred to
if
that.
our interpretation of the building code, which has to be exactly the same as Portland's building code, is that they're not allowed in the same place that they are allowed in Portland, then I would say interpretation might need to be reviewed.
Okay.
Well, this came up with Parklet, remember? And I mean, I think, it makes sense to me that you can't put those heat lamps under a tent.
Yeah.
It has to be a solid.
I think that there's a certain, but there's also how involved is your planning and building inspector, and is she showing up there for lunch, and is she seeing some of these things, and how on it is she when she sees violations? So we're cautious because we're a smaller town. We get around, we see all the pieces of the town, and we're enforcing more than maybe some of the larger cities who don't have the same enforcement capabilities.
Yeah,
I don't think the code is actually the issue.
But I can clarify once I get the information back from the building department and where we're at with that.
I'd like us to work together a little bit more on this. If it's a question about, the specific tents that they're using are creating the problem, because obviously it's not our code. I mean, we all know that there are semi-permanent structures in Portland that are up all the time, and they're heated when they need to be. So if it's, what are the variables that are causing the problem, and can they be, and can we all work together to fix them?
Yeah, and I'm also going to say this was a non-permanent structure, and we kept it that way very specifically because of our codes, and to make sure that we could allow for this use on this site. So we've purposefully left it pretty temporary for that reason, just to make sure that we're, and I hear you.
And when I say semi-permanent, for that exact reason. I'm not talking about permanent structures that would.
And we explored a lot of those options during the first year of the planning related to this project before it, became a reality in 2017. And we chose the path that would be least resistant.
I don't want to beat this hours thing to death, but there are no requirements, I assume, in any of and maybe there are subleases with the cards and with Mr. Johnson?
He handles all the leases. Mm-hmm.
Okay, and there are no requirements, I'm sure, or I guess not, about opening hours or a minimum number of hours?
There is.
There are?
Mm-hmm.
So
that's why we've been asking him to enforce them.
Well, there was one thing about posting them. I can post them but there are actual minimum opening requirements?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, so they're just being violated. And we have carts knocking on the door waiting to come in?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So is this you asking staff to be bad
guys? Don't need to go any further.
As long as we don't lose the sushi place. So my last question is, when is the lease up?
In another year.
Yeah.
It was 2
Okay.
years.
Exactly. Yep. Exactly a year now.
Cool. Well, let's have further conversations as that approaches.
We'll come back with that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
So I stay up here.
Oh, yeah.
And
All right, yes, Hillside Manor and Park update with Alma Flores, and I'm betting Chuck and somebody else. Mary Ray.
Oops, that's not it.
Bye, Denise.
You were so close, just right here.
No, you're over here. I'm way on the.
I'll drive.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry about that. So Jill's not here, so Jill's not joining us.
Sure, I'll be Jill.
Okay, no, we don't want you to be Jill.
Wow, this is awesome.
We treat
Impressed.
all of our guests this way.
I don't get this at any of my county meetings.
What can we say?
Yeah.
Well, I'm really excited you're here. So. This is
Alma
great.
Flores, Community Development Director. Joining me tonight is Chuck Robbins of the Housing Authority of Clackamas County. Mary Rain O'Meara is the Project Manager on the Hillside Park and Manor Development site, also with the Housing Authority of Clackamas County. And they will give you update number 2 on all of the activity that's been happening at the park with the master planning process to make sure you have complete knowledge of what's going on.
So good evening, Mayor Gamba and councilors. My name's Chuck Robbins, and Mary Rain is really the brains behind all of this. I said I'd just kind of come in, make sure that she has all the support she needs on this, give you a little bit of update of what's going on with the Manor, but really spend most of the time on what's going on with Hillside Park. So just a little bit of background. I'm sure you all know this, but we're talking about the Hillside site. It's about 16 acres. It's got 200 units of public housing on it, 100 in the 9-story tower, which is called the Manor, and another 100 in our scattered around the site, which is the park. This is a HUD rental assistance demonstration project. What that means is that this is public housing, and public housing has very significant rules and regulations associated with it, and one of the big ones is we can't borrow money to fix things. It has to be debt-free. So HUD has given us this tool called RAD, Rental Assistance Demonstration, which allows us to really convert it from public housing into more of a Section 8 voucher type of a program. So we still maintain the ownership. We still have very low-income people that live there, but instead of public housing, they have a voucher, they live there. We can then go out and borrow money so that we can fix the facility. And that's really what I kind of wanted to chat about on the Manor itself. So as I said, the Manor is 9 stories, 100 units, built in the 70s. You can imagine what the seismic standards in the 70s were. So, that's a concern. It hasn't been really upgraded since then. So, Mary Rain, and I really want to thank her for the amount of work that she did. Really a Herculean effort. She put together an application for a 9% low-income housing tax credit. That's usually a year process. She put it together in 3.5 months, and put together an application that was very well received by Oregon Housing Community Services. It met their threshold, meaning that it moved on and got review. Unfortunately, we didn't get funded this first year. Disappointing, but not the end of the world, and honestly not unexpected. It's pretty rare to have a first-time application go through.
Is that a state decision or a federal decision?
That's a state decision. So Oregon Housing Community Services, OHCS, they're the ones that administered the 9% low-income housing tax credit. It's very competitive. There's always winners and losers in this. But because, it was so well accepted, and we only missed funding by 2.5 points. So, that just shows how competitive this is. We're working with OHCS to try to find out, a debrief on our application and see what we can do so that when we resubmit, that we stand a better chance of being funded. So we're not giving up on it. It is our number one priority to get that remodeled. However, one of the key issues at the Manor is the elevator. We have 2 elevators there. They're, because of their age, because of the difficulty in getting parts, we really worry that, should one of them go, and we've had them go down, it takes a long time to get them up. If we were to have both of them go down, that's catastrophic. So we can't wait. So we've gone ahead and we're using Housing Authority funds. We're going to be putting out a contract to get both of those updated, and that construction should start in January. So that at least will take care of a key problem, or at least a key concern. And the application, the next 9% application is January. So, we're moving in that direction. So that kind of gives you up to date on the Manor. As I said, disappointing, not the end of the world. We'll get that taken care of. What we really wanted to do is turn it over to Mary Rain and talk about all of the planning associated with the remainder of that property, the 100 units, Hillside Park.
So good afternoon, Mayor and councilors. Thank you for this opportunity to provide this update on the master plan. I want to acknowledge our partnership with the City of Milwaukie and Alma and Valeria, and all of their input and participation thus far has been just tremendous. So really want to acknowledge that. We have officially kicked off the master plan. Thank you to the mayor for your comments at our kickoff event on June 27th. So you'll see there a photo from the event itself. We had quite the turnout, and while we were celebrating our 80th anniversary, it also gave us a chance to introduce the architectural team, Scott Edwards. And so they were out in a booth speaking with community members and residents to gather some initial ideas. But I would like to just talk kind of high level about the overall goals of the project. So we do want to increase density at the site. We are looking at the potential for up to 400 new units with the Manor remaining in place. This will be a mixed income, mixed use site, and the purpose of the master plan is to gather input and feedback from all of the various stakeholders about what is the vision for the site. In conjunction with the visioning, we have development and financial feasibility testing. So we will eventually arrive at 3 different concepts for the site, and those concepts will be vetted and tested from a financial and development feasibility perspective. And then we'll go back to the community and say, here's where we've landed from both site design and feasibility perspective. So I want to talk about what we've done to date around public engagement and then also speak to next steps. We have, through our public engagement consultant, Enviro Issues, they have held 7 stakeholder interviews, and I'll talk about that in a bit more detail in another slide, between August 21st and 29th with key stakeholders to garner initial concerns and answer questions. We had a resident listening session with residents of Hillside, Manor, and Park on September 5th, and I'll talk about that as well in a bit more detail. And part of our planning process involves a partnership with Clackamas County Public Health Division. We are doing what's called a health impact assessment. This has been done only on 13 housing projects across the nation. And the intent here is to look at design, to look at the vision for the future with a public health lens. What can we incorporate in the project that will boost the health of the current residents, protect the services and the connections that currently exist on the site, but also bring new amenities. So we have distributed a survey to residents to talk about initial health concerns and status. But that process, we have Valeria from the city involved on, and that's happening in parallel with the design. So I will also talk about next steps when we get a bit further along. So our resident listening session we held in the fellowship room at the Manor on September 5th. We had 42 residents who came and participated. This was kind of a conversation style event. We had translation provided in Russian and Spanish, and it was really an opportunity for the residents to tell us about how, what do you know so far? What are your initial questions and concerns? How do you want to be informed and engaged going forward? And taking that information and then putting together the rest of the engagement plan, now knowing what some of those concerns and questions are. So what we heard out of that was very strong emphasis for safety. Residents want a safe community. They want to see improvements that boost the sense of safety. Interest around economic development opportunities. Interest around better connection to the overall neighborhood and community. So while there are existing community connections, there's also some sense of social isolation with some of the residents. So really a desire to see through this redevelopment how connectivity can be improved with the overall neighborhood. Definitely some desire for improved services around mental health, physical health. So as we move forward in our conversation with Providence and and other stakeholders will be looking at how do we fill the gaps in those services for existing and future residents. So as I mentioned, we also distributed this health survey, and we did receive some of those back, and we'll continue to distribute those throughout the process to help inform that health impact assessment. And please jump in if you have questions or wait till the end, whatever is your preference here. So I mentioned earlier that we, through our public engagement consultant, there's been 7 interviews conducted with representatives from the Ardenwald Neighborhood District Association, Providence, Milwaukie, Hillside residents, City of Milwaukie, thank you, Ann Ober, for your time, Milwaukie Police Department, and then resident services staff at the Housing Authority and representation of the adjacent Murphy site. So again, similar to the resident listening session, these interviews were conducted to help inform the strategy going forward. What are your concerns and questions? How can we engage you further? Who else should we be speaking to throughout the process? And from those interviews, we have a list of 21 different representatives for a stakeholder committee. So over the next year, we'll be convening a stakeholder committee with representatives from Providence, TriMet, PGE, Ardenwald Neighborhood, the elementary school, residents, public health. There's, again, a vast array of representatives that will be convening to help inform the process and provide feedback. So I won't go through these in detail, but these are the materials you have provided in your staff, in your report packet. This is the draft public involvement schedule. So it really provides the overview of, over the next year, what are the activities that are going to be held, what is the work that's being done to help inform the plan. You'll see that, stakeholder interviews have been conducted, listening session has been conducted. We now have a draft engagement plan that we're all reviewing, and I know Alma and Valeria are going to provide their input on that as well. And the next big piece of engagement will be in late October. We're holding 3 visioning workshops with residents, neighbors, and then we'll have 1 workshop that's specific for service providers. And in November, December, we'll get into the actual design charrettes. So that's, more of the design-specific work that will help inform those actual site design concepts. So in addition to the engagement strategy, you also have this matrix of all of the communication tools and tactics. I cannot take credit for this amazing document. This is why we have consultants, and really pleased with the work of Enviro Issues as the community engagement consultant on this project. You'll see the various stakeholder interests represented on the top, and then the methods and means of communication whereby we will be keeping the stakeholders involved and informed throughout the process. So this goes on for a couple more pages. And then just in closing, wanted to provide this overview timeline. So, we've just kind of summarized what we've done in August and September, and now we're moving into the visioning workshops and a sustainability planning event, October, December. And then we'll have the design workshops, open houses, January and May, and all leading to the final open house in June with an eventual master plan adoption for this vision for the site. So thank you, and happy to take questions or comments.
A couple questions. You mentioned that one of the concerns was safety. Is it safety from a criminal aspect or safety internally in the way the design of the units are? Or falling or something of that nature?
Sure. I think there's a bit of both. So, I've spoken with residents and representative from the police department about the current conditions. So we have the tower, which needs to have improved security, and that's part of the scope of work for the rehabilitation. So there are some existing concerns about people being let into the tower that are otherwise maybe not authorized. We know that occasionally we will have a houseless individual come in and just sleep on the couch in the library. So, I think it ranges from sort of the sense of intrusion in the current structure, and then out on the park, some of the same concerns from the police department perspective, potentially a few houses with some drug activity that they've been involved in and watching. And there's a really good partnership between the police department and our property management on site. But I think looking forward, the sense that in the redeveloped community, how can we keep safety and security in mind? So that can range from everything to the layout of the streets, to the design type, to the lighting. I know it's been mentioned potentially a small police station on site even could be contemplated. So, at this point, we're really open to feedback from A to Z around what that looks like.
Okay. And then you also mentioned there's a bit of isolation among the residents, and I know that you just said library. I forget what else is there that's communal in any way, and will there be more community spaces?
Yes, absolutely. So currently we have a fellowship room and a library in the Manor. That's the tower, so those are the main community spaces. And then there's a community room in Hillside Park, so that can be utilized for parties and meetings. It is a small space, but we definitely want to look at how can we expand upon those spaces that can serve both the residents and neighborhood, a space available for neighborhood meetings or other events. We're looking at recreation and obviously having a health focus, walkability, all of those aspects of improved amenities.
Yeah, and I would also say that as we design this site, keep in mind that, what are we missing, in this community, and that whole missing middle idea, the different types of housing, the parks, the walking space, things like that will bring people in. So, because right now I think what the residents are feeling is, that they live there, they'll go out and do something, they'll come back, and then that's it. There's no interaction. So how do we open it up? Right now it looks like it's a pretty closed space, and I think that the idea is to create a design that is more open and makes people come in and use it.
Good. Such great opportunities for that site.
Yeah. Keep in mind that this project is also looking to be a mixed income project. So Mary Rain, can you speak a little bit more about that aspect of?
Sure. So again, we're doing the financial and development feasibility around what can we fund and build on the site. We have a demand for affordable units. So I think at a minimum 200 of the units, obviously 100 to replace the existing, and at least an additional 100. But we want to look at that range of income type, the range of design type. Could there be home ownership opportunities? Could there be higher market rents that could help diversify the community and give it a better sense of connectivity? We don't have the mix yet. That'll be part of what's being determined in the feasibility.
Is that something that Providence, the hospital, it seems like there's an opportunity there to provide housing for employees. Is that something that they're interested? Are they interested in being involved in that conversation?
Absolutely. Had a meeting with Providence a month and a half ago, and that was something that came up, is their own staff. So I think that, again, that's what's so exciting about this process. It's completely wide open to kind of whatever we want. Right now, it's 100%, people at 30% of area median income or lower. So, extremely low. I could see us easily moving up into the 80% area median income. The 60%, that's what we consider the kind of workforce housing. So, when you start opening up that income, it just kind of opens up the community. And that would be the overall plan.
And you're also looking at the opportunity for retail and commercial space in there. I'm thinking like a little coffee shop, a little sandwich shop, dry cleaners, those kinds of things.
Yeah, so that's part of the process, is asking those questions about desired uses, hearing from residents and neighbors, what do they think to be gaps in services currently. We're just starting, and we've heard a lot of ideas, again, ranging from police station to cafe to maybe a small market. On the resident resident side, there's an interest in how can we provide a space for economic empowerment. So is that a commercial kitchen where residents who do baking can have a space to then launch a small business? One woman mentioned she's a candle maker, so she would love to have, if it's a gift shop or a space where maybe they could host a bazaar every year and people who do crafts on site could sell their products. So I think there's a strong interest. Once we start the broader outreach with the neighborhood, we'll get a sense from the neighbors as well, what they would like to see on site.
So you mentioned the health impact assessment. So can you talk about that a little bit more? I mean, so like, what does that include and what kind of results might come from that? I'm not sure I understand that whole piece.
Sure. So we have a consultant on board for that process as well, and she's a professor who really specializes in these processes. And first of all, what it involves is what do we want to focus on? And so what we are focusing on through the health impact assessment is a look, again, at what is currently in place, how is the current health of the residents, so this is what the resident survey is getting at, where are the gaps in services, what are the risks, right, through this transition that we need to be really mindful of. Is it disruption to community connection? Is it exposure for certain health elements? But we want it to have a forward-looking aspect as well. So given the current state of the community, what can we build in from a health perspective? So that might be a behavioral health clinic, or it might be, again, the walkability, the access to healthy foods. So it very much is kind of scan and survey of what currently exists, and then what do we need to be planning for from a health perspective.
So might it also include, or I'm sure you big guys have been talking about and thinking about, like houses that are ADA accessible and that? I mean, I was out at the Veterans opening, and some of those are ADA and some of them aren't, and you can definitely see the big differences in the two of them.
Yes, and some of that plays out more on the design side, and in terms of who's the population that we hope to attract to the new units. But as a housing authority, we also have really strict regulations around the ADA accessibility. One of our stakeholder committee members is from AARP of Oregon, so they will be bringing that kind of senior-specific livability to the design process. So absolutely, we want to look at that in terms of design and the health impact.
Yeah.
And so a couple other things that we might be looking at is as we build, what kind of ventilation do we have in these buildings? Are we, there's been some discussion about having some, and it's kind of a med apartment, so it's a smart apartment that's connected to a health care that has, extra air conditioning, and I don't mean air cooling, but in terms of filtration for people with asthma or people susceptible to asthma. So there's things like that. There's design work, like making sure that you don't design dead-end streets, so that people, in order to get from point A to point B, you don't have to walk all the way out of the neighborhood and back in. That you have cut-throughs. So now all of a sudden it's an easier, easier trip. You're not driving cars that maybe enforces people or encourages people to walk, to ride bikes. All of that kind of stuff. The train, is a challenge. It's loud. What can we do to mitigate that? What kind of things do we put near the train, closer to the train tracks and farther from the train tracks? All of that can be brought in. Just kind of how do you create a healthier community?
So the smart units, that might be something like what some of the residential care facilities provide for their folks who live there, depending on their abilities and longevities, expected, and one thing and another, different things that have someone else somewhere kind of knowing what's going on, monitoring more or less.
That's a possibility. That is something that came up in a conversation with our public health director, and Don Emmerich, very interested in seeing if we couldn't get something like that. That's a little unusual, but it's in line with what we're talking about. And in terms of kind of adult assisted living, that is something that Providence is very interested in. They would love to have some adult assisted living right across from their facilities, so that it may just even be transitional, where people could come in, live there, not be in the hospital, be taken care of, and before they go home.
Right.
So again, I get really excited. That's the most exciting thing about what we're doing, is we get to design it all.
Yeah.
And nothing gets thrown out. The only thing that limits us is our imagination and money.
Yeah, well, the money part. There we go.
Put that second. Let's imagine it first, and then see if we
Right.
can
Don't
find
kick
the
it
money.
out until you. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's awesome.
So is there any, you mentioned that one of the stakeholders you talked to was Murphy site owners. Are they really going to engage in this, do you think?
Yeah, so I actually spoke again to a representative from the Murphy Company today and got a commitment for a specific representative to serve on the stakeholder committee. They spoke with me a bit about where they are in the planning process for their site. It sounds like very early, but I emphasize that we would like to have some alignment and have them at the table as we both look forward to complementary uses and development on our two sites.
Because I've definitely heard that the hospital's also spoken with them and with different developers who want to develop that site, and, about some of the same things that sounds like they're talking to you about. Yeah. And the neighborhood visioning, the 3 visioning workshops coming up, for the neighborhood ones, are you just noticing a certain periphery, or are you going to make it open to the whole of Ardenwald, or exactly how are you doing that?
So to date, we have a notice going out in the Milwaukie pilot, so I know that's citywide. We will also be utilizing Nextdoor. We'll probably do a mailing. I'll need to work with the city around appropriate addresses, but at least I would think within the boundaries of the Ardenwald neighborhood district. And then beyond that, the various tools, so the county website, all of the things that have been identified in our matrix, but it will be open to the public and residents. We're holding those sessions at Providence in their Mother Gamelin room. It has bigger capacity, and we also need to have a screen for technology purposes, which we're a little bit more limited in our current public housing facilities. So we will be getting the word out broadly, but are also open to hear any recommendations, and Alma and Valeria agreed about sharing those with us.
Great.
Awesome.
I was glad to hear that TriMet is involved, because one of the main things that I know about, I live in the neighborhood, I'm in the Ardenwald district just right up the street, is obviously the 75 is frequent, and I write that all the time, and I see folks getting on and off at that stop. But, to connect from the 75 to other lines is is kind of a challenge, especially if, you have mobility issues getting from the 75 all the way to the orange line. It's a walk, or a roll. And, so are they there to talk about those connectivity issues? Is it really just about service of the one line that they currently operate? Like what?
So at this point, I have a planner from TriMet who is committed to serve on the stakeholder committee. We haven't provided any sort of expectation around that, other than please come to our first committee and participate in this. I think the conversation will evolve, and I'm also really pleased that we had a quick response and someone who's committed to being there representing TriMet. I think alongside, conversations with City and David, our David Levitin on the planning side, there will be continuing conversations around what we need from TriMet. I think I mentioned the density increase, so that probably got their attention. And so that will be a continued conversation. Chuck asked me to mention that I'm holding office hours on site starting tomorrow, 9 to 11. So that's really just a drop-in opportunity for residents or neighbors to come in and chat, and another way, hopefully, to ease some of the anxiety, especially on the resident side. There's still a lot of question and concern around relocation and how all of this will play out. And even though we emphasize it's still, a couple of years out, there's understandably some concern there.
Sure.
So 9 to 11 every day or Wednesday?
Every Wednesday.
Every Wednesday.
Starting tomorrow.
And you mentioned your Chuck, and how about our Chuck with engineering? Again, touching back on the transportation piece, the sidewalks that are in front of, some of them are really quite good. On the Providence side, I'd say the sidewalk connection's really great. On the opposite side, you have folks in wheelchairs in the middle of the street because they can't stay on the sidewalk. It's so dangerous. It's about that wide in some areas. Are you aware of the SAFE program and some of the opportunities there to make sure that we're working together on?
So their engineering consultant has already reached out to Chuck to make sure that their understanding of the current sort of city rules
schedule and
are in alignment in some way. At some point, we'll have to have a technical advisory group broader than the one that we currently have, bring in some of those players to talk more, drill down on some of those relevant issues.
Yeah, okay.
For broader development when we're there.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Along with Public Works and, building and, several other.
Sure. I know that there are some things planned for 32nd and 29th, which both will, both of those are going to connect to you. And so I'd hate for us to sort of get too far down a road on what we're doing in the city and then have to somehow make it jive with what you're doing.
We also have the Meek Street project. So all of those connections are, we're definitely trying to make sure that we're informed, informing.
And I forgot to mention, in addition to the stakeholder committee, we have a monthly planning committee. So that involves Alma, Valeria, David from the city of Milwaukie, all of our consultants. So that's when the architects and the engineer and community engagement, health impact, all of us get together in the same room and talk about progress, upcoming milestones, and really kind of dial into these additional coordination efforts that need to occur.
Great.
So a couple of simple questions and then some thoughts. Curiosity, do the folks from the park have access to the library and the community room in the Manor?
Not officially, and actually that was a big learning point from our September 5th resident meeting. We held it in the fellowship room and did the invitation to all Park and Manor residents, but we had overwhelming representation from the Manor. Out of the 42 participants, I think only 5 or 6 were from the park. So part of our conversation both there with the residents is how can we improve upon this? And that's one of the reasons why we've shifted the venue now to Providence, thinking that, that might be a bit more of an open and neutral space. There are definitely some resident dynamics around, access and then just a sense of feeling welcome for the park residents in the tower. So we're trying to get around that by changing the venue.
Okay. The property next to the tower that's down in the lower part, is that being considered or brought into the master plan
It is.
process?
So this is, I'm going to bring up the site.
Yeah, absolutely it is.
Plan.
And in fact, we just completed what did we have done?
We had geotechnical due diligence completed, right? Because we knew from the phase 1 that was historically a gravel pit. So wanted to have some geotechnical assessment completed to determine the construction suitability. And it's good news. Nothing really outstanding, just, that we can build on the site if that's our desired outcome. So that will be part of what's explored during the process.
As was touched on, I think, and you talked about their desire for connectivity to the neighborhood. our transportation system plan does call for 29th, which is to be a greenway, to pass through both of those properties, both the Hillside property and the Murphy property, eventually to connect, eventually over to Railroad, so that there would be that connectivity from Springwater Corridor all the way out to the 205 bike path eventually, which puts people past the Clackamas Town Center and the college and the swim center and some really nice natural areas. I mean, there's a really good connectivity that I hope that will play up in this design. I'm interested in the idea of having space for residents to be able to be entrepreneurial, some kind of flex micro, whatever that would look like, the incubator kind of space to help people maybe launch a business. Or
Yeah, it's very exciting.
I think that's very forward thinking and something.
There's some EDA funds that we can go after as part of the financing feasibility.
Has Bridge Meadows been brought into the conversation at all?
Yes. In fact, I was going to even mention them. They have, since we started talking about this, word gets out in the community. We've been approached by a lot. We got approached by Providence, for some interest. Bridge Meadows, approached us about a year and a half ago saying that they would be very interested in putting in an intergenerational housing project. So, and I think that the plan is that as we go through this development, we take all of that information, because this isn't all going to be developed at one time. It's not all going to be developed by the Housing Authority or even probably one developer. We probably end up phasing this. We've just, it's just too disruptive to try to, relocate 100, households at the same time. So I can see us phasing this small projects at a time and building all of that. So Housing Authority will be developer on some, but we'll be working with our nonprofit partners to develop things. People, it might be somebody other than Bridge Meadows that also comes in. So I don't know who's out there, but the word's getting out that we have land. And given, all of this conversation about the Metro bond, that just opened up the conversation beyond just the borders of Clackamas County. And so now, Washington County, Multnomah County knows we actually have land to be developed. So there's a lot of interest.
Yeah, and I think that's why it's pretty exciting that we're doing this planning process now, because assuming that passes, that's, got a fairly short window for build. But the good side of that is the places that are planned and ready to go, that means they're going to get the money. So I think the further along we are as that comes to fruition, the likelier we are to receive a significant portion of that. I think the last two things are you talked about sort of the health effects of good air quality in buildings. These guys are going to be tired of hearing about it, but out in the passive house construction that they used out in Hillsborough.
Orenco.
At Orenco. That is about as good air quality as you can possibly hope for inside of a building. And when they did the second phase, that it was only a slight increase in the cost over standard construction. So you end up with a very efficient building, energy-wise, but you also end up with the best possible air quality that you can hope for. So I think if we're keeping those things in mind, and Walsh Construction has done some really extraordinary work around optimizing even how you face a building, which direction you face a building, and dimensional things to increase the value you get for the cost that you spend. And then the last thing I wanted to mention was the PGE partnership that we're really just starting to launch into, and the possibilities there around sort of the microgrid and smart buildings and energy storage and energy production and all of the things that are going to not only could make it more sustainable, but also a lot more resilient in the result of a earthquake or some other natural disaster, where that area, the hospital, and your area and the police station and all of that would be up and running still while everyone else isn't.
So we've connected this group with the PGE folks on the Smart Cities Initiative.
Cool.
Met
Yeah,
twice now.
and we will have a representative on our stakeholder committee, and I wanted to speak to the sustainability piece. We are going to hold a sustainability charrette in October. We have partnership with Energy Trust of Oregon as well, and absolutely part of the overall, at this point it's site design, we're not into the detailed building design, but this is the opportunity to lay the groundwork for goals around sustainability for the site, and then later on, how do those get translated into building orientation and efficient systems, and all of those aspects that really impact day-to-day livability. So we're definitely keeping that a focus of the process as well.
Yeah, Mike Steffen specifically at Walsh has been doing some really interesting work around this.
Yeah.
So, cool. It's all very exciting.
Thank you.
I brag about it all the time, so.
See, you're getting excited. You know, it's contagious.
Yep.
And I have to say that the involvement in by the community has been terrific, and it's been very supportive. I mean, a lot of things have changed in 10 years, and when we tried to do this before, and I think that we're lucky. Now is exactly the right time to be doing this. So really appreciate all your leadership and participation. Alma, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. My pleasure.
That's right.
Hey, this is fun work.
Good job, you guys.
Thank you so much.
Good job.
Great.
Really good update.
Ahead of schedule. My goodness.
Cool. Thanks. Anything else? Did I have something on my thing I was supposed to read?
I don't think so.
Not right now.
No, shocking.
to adjourn.
Cool.
You get to just
So
have dinner.
we will adjourn until 6 o'clock when the regular session will start.
All right.